WVEC-TV, Plan.
It's time for What Was Waiting for Two, and here we go.
This is Jeff McKay, ABC News.
June is National Pride Month, and in Virginia is a reminder that the case that legalized gay marriage in the country began here in Norfolk. More than a decade ago, there was a controversial battle for marriage equality in a state that had a history of fighting for the legalization of interracial marriage. We decided to revisit that debate in the Supreme Court case Loving versus Virginia and how history was about to be made again. We hope you enjoy this look back with our 2014 documentary, Virginia is for Lovers, Marriage in the Commonwealth, Past, Present, and Future.
The following is a special presentation of 13 News Now.
In the Old Dominion, there are new attitudes on marriage.
Told us to leave the state for 25 years.
From loving to lovers.
We believe that God's love is for all people.
Setting off a political firestorm.
But I stopped short when it came to full marriage equality.
And strong beliefs.
Marriage has been under fire a long time.
And believers. Virginia is for lovers. Marriage in the Commonwealth. Past, present.
Let me kiss your bride.
And future.
13 News Now presents Virginia is for Lovers, Marriage in the Commonwealth, Past, Present, and Future.
It's a battle over marriage, and right now, Virginia is at the forefront of a nationwide shift in how it's defined. Good evening, I'm Janet Roach. Marriage and alliance, igniting a debate embroiled in a passion that's fueled by a quest for civil rights, by religion, and what's believed to be traditionally acceptable. Watch as two sides wage new wars over an institution that is as old as time. It's a hot summer Sunday.
We believe that God's love is for all people.
And it's a full house at Norfolk's New Life Metropolitan Community Church. They pray. Amen. And worship the Spirit of God. Leading the way is Pastor Mark Bird. As expected of ordained clergy, he preaches the gospel.
That's the promise of God.
But perhaps unexpected, he's a gay man, married a year and a half to Alberto Najera, also ordained clergy, happy and in love.
Alberto is the answer to much prayer.
And just like many same-sex ceremonies over which he's presided, he too had to cross the state line to Washington, D.C. to tie the knot.
And then we cross back across the Potomac River, and wow, it's like it never happened.
Like it never happened because gay marriage has been against the law in Virginia. But last February, Norfolk U.S. District Judge Arinda Wright Allen ruled the ban on same-sex matrimony unconstitutional. And in late July, the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals upheld Allen's decision. Ultimately, the challenge is expected to land before the U.S. Supreme Court. And at the center of the argument could be the case in which gay couple Tim Bostic and Tony London were denied a marriage license in Norfolk.
People right now in this world, in this country, want to see equality in marriage.
Led to the ministry decades ago as a Baptist minister in western North Carolina, Bird hid the fact he was gay, even from his then wife and daughter.
For many, many years, I felt that I would have to give up my spirituality and my faith if I were to come out as a gay man.
And now he says it's the same faith that helped sustain him on the front lines of the fight for marriage equality. But is it the same Christian faith that propels others to do the opposite?
We believe that marriage, unfortunately, is under attack.
Bishop E.W. Jackson leads a church called just that, The Called. He's also the founder of STAND, which stands for
Staying True to America's National Destiny.
In a recent STAND email, Jackson is quoted as saying, "We must do battle against the growing intolerance, bigotry, and persecution of Christians who will not bow to same-sex marriage."
We believe God created marriage. Man didn't invent it. The fight will continue as long as there's breath in our bodies.
Known for his blunt language against gay marriage, the former Republican lieutenant gubernatorial nominee says his views are based on what's in the Bible. He refers to Romans chapter 1. In it, the preachings of Apostle Paul. Verse 27, the men abandoned the natural function of the woman and burned in their desire toward one another.
And he says, you know, when men burn in their lust for other men, women for other women, he says it's working that which is unseemly.
For me, as a gay man, to try to be heterosexual is just as unnatural.
Same scripture, different take.
Do you think they love the same way?
Well, see, remember, you know, if you're talking to me as a Christian minister, see, I would argue that people who don't know God, don't have a living relationship with Jesus Christ, don't really know how to love, because God is love.
And the Holy Spirit that sustains you every day.
Bird says God's love is what they celebrate here every week. Legally, who's right will be determined by the courts. But both men say the ultimate judge will be from a much higher power.
To say that this is about my religious belief, but yet when it discriminates against someone else, how can that be from the love of God?
Yeah, I want to see us treat everybody right. I want to see us treat everybody fairly, but I also want to see us be a nation that God favors, that God is pleased with.
Hallelujah. We hear people say they want to preserve traditional marriage. What exactly does that mean? Historians tell us marriage has changed over thousands of years, differing between cultures and countries. And love? Well, that didn't always play a part.
With this ring,
I
thee wed.
Marriage, a bond, a contract, a union, but tradition?
There is no such thing really as a traditional marriage.
It has meant different things to different cultures. As historians tell it, travel back in time more than 4,000 years to one of the first recorded marriages between man and woman. That takes you to 2350 BCE, ancient Mesopotamia, or modern-day Iraq. Brides were auctioned off to sons of families that traded away land and power. Love had nothing to do with it.
Marriages were for things other than love. They were for labor connections. They were for perpetuation of family names, of dynasties.
Centuries after the fall of the Roman Empire, marriage becomes one of the Roman Catholic Church's 7 sacraments in 1215. And in the 16th century, the Catholic Church decreed that weddings be performed in public by a priest before witnesses. Brides were as young as 12, the grooms 14. Here in the U.S., marriage is largely inherited from the Judeo-Christian tradition.
They wanted to make marriage something that was connected, obviously, with their belief in God.
Still, love is considered more fun outside the marriage and not the basis of tying the knot. In Virginia, male colonists are warned that loving their spouses is, well, boring and would undermine their authority. It wasn't until the 17th century when European Enlightenment thinkers began to change minds and hearts.
A very important cultural movement. That indeed the focus on romantic love became very important.
And as we make our way to the 20th century, it's no longer about playing the field, but leveling the playing field. Marriage becomes more about mutual love and support and the appeal of a nuclear family.
Dear, this coffee's cold.
I don't know why. I just poured it 20 minutes ago when you said you'd be right down.
And we can see with the women's movement, which emphasized the importance of women as individuals and not just property and subordinate figures.
It becomes viewed as a human right, more of an option for women who were once expected and pressured to marry, and a choice for people who were not. Still to come. It's not the first time Virginia has led the way in the fight for marriage equality.
I think to marry who you want to is a right that no man should have anything to do with.
Loving versus Virginia. What happened when you married a person of the wrong color? We talk one-on-one with the attorney who argued the landmark case and won. Then later,
I can't understand what you call gay marriage. It's like saying a geometry teacher propounding a square circle.
yep, he said it and a whole lot more. What else does Delegate Bob Marshall have to say as we look at the politics behind marriage?
Virginia is for Lovers. Marriage in the Commonwealth continues next.
Welcome back. The first interracial marriage to take place in Virginia and in the South was actually here in Norfolk in 1967. It was the first such marriage after a famous landmark Supreme Court decision, Loving versus Virginia, striking down the ban on interracial marriage. And it was that case that inspired the U.S. District Judge in Norfolk to rule the ban on gay marriage unconstitutional, citing Mildred Loving's words. I support the freedom to marry for all. That's what loving and loving are all about. Caroline County, Virginia, population 29,000, snuggled between the outskirts of Richmond and 70 miles from the bustle of Washington, D.C. For such a sleepy southern county, it was once the center of an eye-awakening conflict about love and race.
I didn't realize how bad it was until we got married.
For the story of Richard and Mildred Loving to have been told so many times, it somehow seems new again as the country debates same-sex marriage, the discussion echoing the arguments made some 50-plus years ago. The interracial black-white couple were married in Washington, D.C. in 1958, but when they returned home to Caroline County, they were arrested in the middle of the night. Mildred recalls the moment in this ABC News interview.
I saw this light, and I woke up and it was the policeman standing beside the bed, and he told us to get up, that he was under arrest.
Their marriage violated Virginia's Racial Integrity Act of 1924 that banned interracial marriage.
My husband is white. I am part Negro and part Indian.
And this is Mildred Loving's original letter, penned to the ACLU in her quest to fight for her marriage and the right to live in her hometown. Philip Hirschkopf was one of Loving's attorneys.
They clearly were very much in love.
In what were the turbulent times of the civil rights struggle in the 60s, Hirschkopf says Mildred found her voice.
The big march on Washington was in '63, and there was all this hype about the march, and that stirred up Mrs. Loving.
Hirschkopf at the time was making a name for himself as a gifted civil rights lawyer. He co-founded the Law Student Civil Rights Research Council after being drawn into the struggle during the Danville demonstrations of 1963.
Why were you this civil rights lawyer back in the 60s?
You
probably could have done something else and made a whole lot more money, right?
Well, it was part serendipitous.
So Loving versus Virginia turned out to be a perfect match for him, who never thought he would ever appear before the U.S. Supreme Court.
And in truth, the Virginia laws still view the Negro race as a slave race. That these are the most odious laws to come before the court.
He persuaded the justices that Virginia's anti-miscegenation laws violated the 14th Amendment's promise of equal protection under the law.
These statutes are slavery statutes. They're meant to keep
on equal protection, which is what I insisted on. We stood a chance to make real law. This is the actual opinion that we received.
It was a unanimous decision, a landmark case striking down Virginia's interracial marriage ban.
Richard Loving wasn't interested at all. He just wanted to be with his family and had the guts to stick with them because he could have gone off and done his thing as a white man anywhere.
Today, there are few obvious signs of the history that took place here. Mildred and Richard are buried in the most rural pocket of Caroline County, in Sparta. A monument stands in the middle of the county seat, outlining a list of African American historical achievements. And down at the bottom, a tribute to Mildred Loving.
I think that marrying who you want to is a right that no man should have anything to do with. It's a God-given right, I think.
If Loving versus Virginia hadn't happened, then Richard and Rita Cottingham, a Hampton interracial couple, say they as a couple would have never happened. Their story and how they relate to this interracial couple Tony and Jim.
Actually, his first email to me was, ask me, would I date a white man?
If attitudes on marriage haven't changed, then Rita and Richard Cunningham didn't get the message. Married just 7 years.
Good morning, everyone.
And running their own behavioral health care business, race doesn't matter.
Our similarities are a lot greater than our differences.
But as a black woman in her mid-60s and a white man in his early 70s, they recall a time when not only could they not see interracial marriage as their personal reality, but it didn't even fit within their wildest of imaginations.
I never considered myself being racist, but I just...
It just wasn't something I thought about.
Growing up in Williamsburg, Richard says blacks and whites stayed separate.
But I grew up there and didn't know any black people.
And perhaps there was even less tolerance for race mixing in the small North Carolina town in which Rita grew up.
What happened? What changed?
I guess I met Richard.
Met Richard and saw her own views about race evolve over the years as she became exposed to all types of people.
We thank you for your love.
The pace for acceptance for this married couple has been more like a crawl.
People were very judgmental.
Gay and interracial, Tony Crisp and Jim Whalen have been together 40 years, but only married almost a year. On a morning before church, they talk about the challenges at the beginning of their relationship that were more about race than homophobia.
Because of my skin color, it wasn't because they didn't know about my gay, but because of my skin color, there were certain places we couldn't live together.
Do you see a similarity between your situation and their situation?
I do, in that I think people ought to be able to marry whoever they want to be married to.
But the battle for marriage is not lost.
But there are those who are deeply offended by the comparison between the struggle for racial acceptance and the fight for gay rights.
No, they really can't face discrimination in the same way, because there's never been a situation where wholesale homosexuals have been told, don't come into our store, don't come to our hotels.
I know many African Americans, they don't like that comparison, but I also see it as a matter of human rights and social justice.
And so does his husband, Jim, whose eyes fill with tears when he thinks about how far society has come in accepting he and Tony for who they are.
And there's still a lot of discrimination, but it's so much better. There's so many role models.
That sign right there, Virginia voters betrayed by Herring, is directed at the Attorney General. Mark Herring refused to defend the law that banned same-sex marriage in Virginia. His political foes are fired up, and one of his biggest critics will say anything to protect marriage and go after anyone who gets in his way.
Janet, when you combine a man and a man, you get nothing, or a woman and a woman, nothing issues from that.
He could perhaps be the state's most vocal opponent of gay marriage.
I can't understand what you call gay marriage.
He's Bob Marshall, Republican House delegate since 1991, from a conservative chunk of Prince William and Loudoun counties. And for any same-sex supportive argument, he punches back with one of his blunt responses.
I mean, come on, are you telling me that when they fought up here in Spotsylvania and Fredericksburg and Manassas, that the Yankees were out here trying to make America safe for sodomy?
It was Marshall who co-authored the 2006 Virginia Marriage Amendment, defining marriage as solely between a man and a woman. 57% of voters ratified the amendment at the polls in November of the same year.
Anything else is bogus.
What's his fear if gay marriage becomes the law of the land? He says a total restructuring of social relationships, from having to teach same-sex ed in schools to churches losing their tax-exempt status if they refuse to perform same-sex ceremonies.
The gay person would say, hey, I love just like you do. I want to get married.
Then marry somebody of the complementary sex. That's like saying, I want to jump in water, but I don't want to get wet.
I concluded I had to do something.
In his fight against gay marriage, Marshall has set his sights on another target.
It was not a decision I reached lightly.
Attorney General Mark Herring. In January, he made a dramatic announcement to no longer defend the ban on gay marriage.
I intend to ensure that Virginia is on the right side of history.
Today, he tells me that was the right thing to do, in spite of the avalanche of criticism lobbed his way.
Herring, do your job!
And Marshall's attempt to get him out of office.
Mark Herring says this is required by the 14th Amendment. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
In this instance, I don't think he understands the law and the Constitution.
According to Herring, Virginia has been on the wrong side of history before, and the right side eventually won. For one, Brown versus the Board of Education, which included plaintiffs from Prince Edward County.
And Virginia argued on the wrong side of school desegregation.
And Loving versus Virginia.
Again, Virginia argued in a key landmark U.S. Supreme Court civil rights case on the wrong side.
That comparison drives Marshall crazy.
We're talking about, Oriental or Caucasian or Negro or whatever, Asian. That's different from gender.
Marshall has filed a resolution requesting the House examine whether Herring committed an impeachable offense by abandoning the gay marriage ban. But so far, his attempts have gained little traction, even among fellow Republican lawmakers.
This is an effort to go beyond the mere private cohabitation to compel you, me, and everybody else to accept the so-called morality of sodomy-based relationships between men and whatever the lesbians are doing.
Still to come,
I feel that the state of marriage is a man and a woman.
What the older generation says is wrong with how marriage has changed. And we meet a younger lesbian couple hoping to get married while raising a young daughter. Then later, our final thoughts.
Virginia is for Lovers. Marriage in the Commonwealth continues after the break.
While the idea of what marriage is continues to change, the younger generation has a lot to do with that. Older couples we talk to say we can still learn a lot from the way they do things.
When we got married,
For a couple who met on a blind date, Megan and Thomas Hewitt sure do have a lot of insight into what makes marriage work. 57 years and counting.
He worked nights and I worked days.
So you didn't have to be around each other. So it starts with a good sense of humor.
Take it up.
And continues with doing activities together.
Sweet.
Like their weekly workout at Norfolk's Prime Plus Senior Center. It's the same for Jackie and Bob Kirkman, married 50 years. They connect through their hobby of competing their show dogs. And Steve and Pat Yarrows, married 25 years.
We do many and most things together. It's not two people going their separate ways and then coming together at the end of the day.
They say we could all learn a lesson from an old school approach to marriage, because how they defined marriage back then is not how they see it now.
No. It's entirely different. The people now feel that they can do whatever they want and don't consider the other person.
Young people get married and they keep a bag packed. Something happens, they roll.
And there is something else that is very different. Same-sex couples raising children. This is Olivia, the absolutely adorable one-year-old of two moms, Jennifer Parrish and Rachel Love. Not yet married, but hoping to someday.
Whether it's man, woman, man, woman, it's love.
And the fact that I can't get married to the person that I love makes me angry. It's not fair.
According to the Pew Research Center, 70% of adults born in 1981 or later support marriage equality. It drops to 49% among the Generation Xers, born between 1965 and 1980, and 38% born before that.
Should anybody be able to get married, do you think?
To tell you the truth, it really doesn't bother me in the least.
I don't agree with that at all.
And to me, marriage has always been a man and a woman. But a gay contract would be just fine with me.
I'm really too old to care.
So we're caught up in a seismic shift in how many people view marriage, and the passion behind the debate is even greater than I imagined. Many Christians believe the first marriage was between Adam and Eve, man and woman, the way God intended, and are fierce in their belief that anything else is a sin.
Now, you can call yourself a Christian, but you can't be a Bible-believing Christian.
But what does it really mean when a pastor who's gay and married and Christian says this?
All of us are still God's children, and all of us still deserve to be loved and have the equality
When Mildred Loving said back in 1959 that marrying who you want is a right that no man should have anything to do with, do you think she could have ever imagined her words would be cheered by same-sex couples who want to tie the knot? How about when her attorney, Philip Hirschkopf, said this back in the 60s?
A state may not pass a law which proscribes marriage between two consenting, competent adults based on race alone.
Could you replace the word race with sexual orientation? No matter how you see it, gay marriage remains a complicated issue for Americans. It has pushed us to examine ideas and traditions we have taken for granted and invited Americans to reimagine them in a new context. As marriage has evolved in societies throughout the world, it has adapted and changed as an institution to enable individual fulfillment and social well-being. The question is, who deserves that fulfillment? You? Me? Some of us? Or everyone? I'm Janet Roach.
This has been Virginia is for Lovers, Marriage in the Commonwealth, Past, Present, and Future, presented by 13 News Now.